Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to imagine that you're standing in a garden. It's a glorious summer's day and everything's in bloom. There's an abundance of colour, an abundance of scent. And listen, birds are singing. And standing down the back of the garden, right down the very back of the garden, is a sunflower. A single, tall, thin sunflower. As tall as I am. Considerably thinner. But because of its shape and size, you get the impression that if a strong wind was to come howling through this garden, the sunflower would bend and break. Can you picture all that? Contest chair, Toastmasters, ladies and gentlemen. Joan was our sunflower. Tall, thin, elegant, but with an innocence that left you in no doubt that if a strong wind came howling through her life, that she too would bend and break. When she first came to work with us, she was in her 30s, married with 2 kids. Didn't know how to drive, had never been abroad on holidays, didn't even have her own bank account. So we helped her set up an account, we got her driving lessons, and we sent Joan and her family away to Alicante for 2 weeks. And I have to tell you, she still hasn't forgiven us. She worked with us for 5 years with care and diligence. And then one night, she woke at 2 o'clock one morning to find her husband shaking uncontrollably in bed next to her. Tests would later reveal brain tumours. Joan's whole world was turned upside down. In an instant, every habit and routine was rendered redundant. She immediately quit her job with us to take over the running of the family business, and went from starting work at 9:30 in the morning and finishing at 2:30 to get home to her kids, who were the most important thing to her, to suddenly starting work at 7 o'clock in the morning, sometimes not finishing till 10 o'clock at night. We watched her bend. What about you? Has a wind ever come howling through your life? Think about a sunflower. It's that when the wind comes howling through and it bends, and then the wind passes, it straightens back up again. And in essence, that's exactly what Joan did. Once she'd got over the initial shock, she set about making sure that David and her kids were looked after. She then set about looking after the needs of the business, and slowly, gradually, she started creating brand new habits. And those of us who were looking on, we saw her just getting on top of things, and just as she was getting on top of things, wind came howling through a second time. Through no fault of her own, she was forced to close the family business. There was now no money coming into the house. Instead of being annoyed or angry or upset by this, Joan actually saw it as something good, something positive. Remember, she said to me one day, she said, "Eric, it means I get to spend more time with David. And I know that time with David has an expiry date." Could you do that? In the middle of a raging storm, would you be able to look for the something good, the something positive? I'm not sure I could. For the next 2 years, Joan spent every waking minute with David. They went for long walks. She took him for long drives. Driving had worked. She even took him back to Alicante. And then, at the end of the 2 years, the time expired. Joan cried every day for the next 6 months. Hardly got out of the bed. And then, one Saturday morning, her 8-year-old son crept into the bed beside her, gingerly, and said, "Mum, I want to go to the zoo." Joan would tell us later that that was the moment she knew she needed to get on with her life. It was 5 years ago. Today, Joan works as a special needs assistant, having gone back to college to get the qualifications. She deliberately took a job in a local school because it allows her to start at 9:30 in the morning and finish at 3:30 in the afternoon, so that she can be home for her kids, who will always be the most important thing to her. And she's doing okay. She has bad days. They'll never go away completely. But the difference is that today, those of us who know her, those of us who watched her bend when the wind first came howling through, we don't worry about her anymore. Turns out our sunflower was much stronger than she looked. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we are all sunflowers standing in our own gardens. I think we have glorious summer days when everything's in bloom, when there's an abundance of colour and scent and the birds are singing. And then we have days when the wind comes howling through our lives. What I've learned from Joan is that we are all much stronger than we give ourselves credit for, than we realise. If you've ever looked at what somebody else was going through and thought to yourself, I couldn't handle that, I wouldn't be able to survive that, the chances are you could. You would. As somebody once said, you don't know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have. So ladies and gentlemen, the next time the wind comes howling through your life, and it will, know this, it's okay to bend, but you don't have to break. Sunflowers are stronger than they look. Mr. Toastmaster.